Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us online with King's Cross today. Hopefully you are seated warmly in your house with maybe 1, 2, 3 blankets on you because it is crazy cold this morning, which is why we decided to cancel our in-person services because we want to give our fantastic volunteers a bit of a break and not have to come in the crazy, bitter cold. So thanks again for joining us online. Again, my name is Caleb Barrows, and I get the privilege of serving as the lead pastor for King's Cross Church. And as we start this morning, I just wanted to give you one quick announcement. Next Monday, February 22nd, we will be having an interest event for Young Life at 7 p.m. at the First Baptist Church here in Lyons. So Young Life is an international organization that works primarily with high school students to lead them to Jesus, just through kind of everyday relationships and leaders being invested in the schools. So if you'd like to help with that in any way, not necessarily maybe serving directly with students, but you just want to support by spreading the word or financially, we would love to have your help. So again, next Monday, February 22nd at 7 p.m., we'll have this interest event at the First Baptist Church in Lyons where you can learn a bit more. We're actually really excited to see Young Life start here in this area. So although it's been a little bit since we've done this, I also want to give you some time to do a text and greet. So get out your phone real quick, say hello to someone maybe that serves on the same team as you or someone you haven't seen in a little while. Say hello, and we'll get started with our service and a song here in just a second.
And I need you to soften my heart, to break me apart. And I need you to open my eyes, to see that you're shaping my life. And all I am, and I surrender. Trust what you say, that you're good, your love is great, and I'm broken inside, and I give you my life. I need you to soften my heart, break me apart, and I need you to pierce through the dark and cleanse every part of me. And all I am, and I surrender. Oh, give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good, your love is great, and I'm broken inside, I give you my life. So I may be weak, but your spirit's strong in me, my flesh may fail, my God, you never will. I may be weak, but your spirit's strong in me. My flesh may fail, my God, you never will. Oh, I may be weak, but your spirit's strong I may be weak, but your spirit's strong in me. My flesh may fail, my God, you never will. I may be weak, but your spirit's strong in me. My flesh may fail, my God, you never will. Oh, give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good, your love is great, and I'm broken inside. I give you my life. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good, your love is great, and I'm broken inside, and I give you my life.
If Jesus asked you the question, what do you want me to do for you? How would you respond? If he gave you that large of an open invitation to whatever your heart's longing for, what would you ask for? What would you tell Jesus? What do you want me to do for you? And on top of that, what do you think that Jesus desires for you? Not just you want from him, but what does he want for you? What is Jesus after in your life? And we've been going through a series called Lift Up Our Eyes, where we're trying to examine our cultural ways of following Jesus and how we've been taught about him, and instead trying to lift our eyes off of that and set them on who God has revealed himself to be and what Jesus taught and what it means to follow him. And often in our culture today, we can be taught that we can treat God somewhat like a genie. We just come to him when we have various needs in our life, and that's the main motivator behind much of our prayer. But what is Jesus really after for us? What does he come for us? So I want to look today at two stories that have this same question from Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? And both happen back to back in Mark chapter 10, verse 32 through 52. So if you have a Bible, open up there with me. I'm just going to walk through both of these stories. And the first story is about these religious insiders, those who are really familiar with Jesus and what they're wanting from him. And then the second story has to do with a religious outsider, someone that's on the outskirts, has no connection to Jesus, but what he also wants from him. And together we're going to see what Jesus is seeking out, not just for them, but for all of us. So again, look with me at Mark chapter 10, verse 32 through 52. And this first story with the religious insiders begins with Jesus headed on his way to Jerusalem. And this isn't just another visit for a festival. Jesus knows that he is headed towards his death and his crucifixion. So he set his face on Jerusalem and knows what's coming. And he's trying to prepare his disciples who are following him for this. And he's very explicitly explaining, look, I'm about to be betrayed and handed over to the religious leaders, and they're going to have me beaten and crucified. So he's very, very clearly laying out to his disciples what's about to happen. And they're kind of confused and a bit afraid. They don't know what's about to happen. And we get a bit of a clue about how much they're lost, because two of his disciples, James and John, come up with a very selfish request. Now, James and John, we got to know, these are two of Jesus' closest followers. He kind of had an inner group of three that were James and John, these two brothers, and Peter. So they're the closest of closest followers. If anybody's an insider with Jesus and is familiar with him, it's James and John. And they come up to Jesus with this incredible request. They say, Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you. It's like they're just asking for a blank check. Like before Jesus gets an opportunity to hear what they're asking, they already want a yes no matter what they say. It's a stunningly selfish request right in the midst of Jesus on his way to his crucifixion. Him trying to tell them about the suffering he's about to enter into, but they're not even hearing it. They're so lost in themselves. Jesus, will you give for us whatever we ask of you? But it's amazing how Jesus responds. He gives this question, what do you want me to do for you? And see how kind Jesus is to those of us who are religious insiders. Even when we're being driven by our selfishness and ambition, he still hears us. And I don't mean by this that he gives us whatever we ask all the time. It says very clearly in James 3 that we often do not receive what we ask because we ask with wrong motives, to spend things on our own pleasures. But see how kind Jesus still is to hear us in the first place. Doesn't blow us off, but asks us, what do you want me to do for you? He's so good to us to hear. And so James and John, they press on with their question. They say, we want one of us to sit on your left hand and one of us on your right hand in your glory. Now, this can be a bit of a strange request for us, but they're basically asking for the number 1 and number 2 spots when Jesus' reign. They want to be the top dogs. And for them, in following Jesus and thinking that he's the Messiah, they thought he was coming as this amazing conqueror at the head of armies. And he's about to kick out Rome from the country who's ruling at that time, and he's going to set up this amazing government and all of this authority. And they think they're about to ride his coattails into this amazing, prestigious place. They're after power and authority. And so here's where we see the danger for us who might be religious insiders. It's really easy for us, here's the danger, for us to use God as a means to an end. To use God as a means to an end. And this is where James and John, being with Jesus, is not the ultimate good for them. Instead, Jesus is a necessary means to what they really are after. Fame, authority, power, prestige, that's what their hearts really want. And it's amazing how hidden this motive can be in a lot of us. Because we think we're following Jesus, like how good is that? It's a good thing to want to follow him. And that can kind of cover over this deeper motive that we have, that we're really in this for ourselves. Jesus is just the way for us to get what we really want. So it kind of hides our real deep, ugly, selfish longings are hidden in this veneer of Christian language and following Jesus. And that's where we all have to consider, what am I really after in following God? What am I really seeking? For a lot of people, following Jesus can be about having more community. Or following Jesus can be about helping out your finances. Or following him can be a way that you find a spouse or a relationship. All these things that we're really driven after, but Jesus is just the thing we need to get us there. And this is what can be the danger for the insider religious heart, that we just use God as a means to an end. But again, it's incredible how Jesus responds to James and John. He says, you don't even know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I drink? Can you be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with? And it's a little bit of a strange language here, but Jesus is talking about his coming suffering. Later in the Garden of Gethsemane, he'll say, Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me. Meaning the crucifixion he's about to endure, the suffering he's about to go through. So that's the cup he's about to drink. So he's saying, can you both go through the suffering I'm about to experience? And James and John, without hesitation, like, yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can go through whatever, Jesus, whatever it takes for us to get what we want. And Jesus says, yes, you will drink from the same cup. And then he leads them into, this is not for me to give who's going to sit on the left or who's going to sit on the right. That's for my Father to decide. But you will enter into suffering with me. It's Jesus' response. And the other disciples, when they find out about this conversation, what, you guys are trying to lock down position 1 and position 2, they're furious because they wanted the same things. And so they're all trying to jockey and compete and try to find out what they can get from Jesus. So he has to just stop them all and just lay it out very clearly to them. And Jesus says, look, this is the way everybody else does it. They try to jockey for position and power and authority, but that's not how it's supposed to be among you who follow me. Instead, for those of you who want to be great, you must become the servant. And if you want to be first and have the best place, instead you must enter in and become a slave to everybody. And then he adds critically, for even the Son of Man, Jesus, he's saying, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So he's saying, this is how I operate. This is what I'm doing. I give my life. I serve others. So even as James and John, they're after fame and power and authority from Jesus. What Jesus wants for them and for us who are religious insiders, he wants us to be like him. That's what he's driven towards. And he'll do anything to accomplish this goal. Even if that means leading us into suffering and putting us into the furnace of affliction. He will lead us into becoming more and more like him, because that's the best gift he can give us. Being in relationship with him and being made like him. And he's going to accomplish that even in suffering. And this is what happens in James and John's life later. We know this from church history. That after the resurrection, James and John, they're transformed men. They're seeking out Jesus, becoming more and more like him. And it cost them their lives. James is beheaded early in the life of the church because of his testimony about Jesus. And the Apostle John, he's poisoned at one point and it doesn't kill him. So they later exile him to a small island called Patmos, where he spends the rest of his life. Both do learn to drink from that cup of suffering. And both are formed more into the image of Jesus. And they get far more than they were asking for. And it's really what Jesus is after for you and I, to become more and more like him. That's what our hearts, those who are religious insiders, we really need. To not have God as a means to another end, but he himself is our goal. To know him and be like him. So that's the first story. But there's a beautiful connect here as Mark continues the story. After Jesus communicates all this to his disciples, he continues on to Jerusalem, and he's traveling through this large city of Jericho. And all these crowds are coming around Jesus and kind of invading his path, and he's trying to push through. And there's one blind man on the side of the path named Bartimaeus, and he starts crying out at the top of his voice, trying to get Jesus' attention. And he starts yelling, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." So here's all these people trying to press in and get Jesus' attention, trying to get a glimpse of this famous man. They all want to spend a moment with him, and here is Bartimaeus crying out as loud as he can, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And see that this is more than just a request. He's not just saying, "Have mercy on me." It's also a statement of faith and confirmation of who he believes Jesus is, the Son of David. So he's really saying, "Jesus, I know who you are. You're the promised Messiah we've been waiting for. You're the true Son of David who's come to bring God's kingdom back to us. So you, Jesus, I know who you are. Will you have mercy on me?" But the crowds, hearing Bartimaeus cry out, they start to just hush him and tell him to be quiet. They don't want to hear his yelling. Like, "Bartimaeus, what are you trying to do?" Everyone's trying to get Jesus' attention. He doesn't have time for you. And this is where Bartimaeus is such a religious outsider. He is blind and on the side of the road. No one wants to take time for him. No one thinks he has potential of any kind. And what's more than that, they probably saw his blindness as evidence of God's judgment on his life because of the sins of his parents or his own sins. So he's like completely ruled out and unworthy. He's been set to the side and disqualified. He is a religious outsider. And this is the danger for them. Whereas for a religious insider, we can try to use God as a means to another end. For those who are religious outsiders, the challenge can be for them is that God would care about you at all. Does God even care about me? Would he even stop and notice me? Am I worthwhile to him at all? And again, the religious insider, the danger is that we can presume upon God. But the religious outsider, it's for them to wonder whether or not God's compassionate and kind and loving at all. And will he stop for me? Does God care about me? So here's blind Bartimaeus crying out at the top of his voice. And I'm like, what an on the line thing. What if Jesus doesn't stop? How absolutely embarrassing for Bartimaeus. Yeah, that worked really well, didn't it, huh? Like, you should be more quiet next time, Bartimaeus. So here he is so vulnerably crying out, does God have time for me? But see, Jesus stops. Even though he's on his way to Jerusalem, even though he's set his face, nothing's going to stop him in his mission. He halts for this one man. He stops for Bartimaeus. So hear this. If you feel like you are on the outside and you're disqualified and you're unworthy, hear this good news. That no matter what kind of past you have, no matter what kind of baggage you might think you're bringing with you, or how ruled out you are that you don't belong in the religious circles, hear this good news that Jesus stops for you. If you're calling out to him, he will respond. He doesn't just make time, he stops and he calls out to you. So no matter what kind of background or how disqualified you think you might be, know that if you cry out to Jesus, he will respond. And so Jesus calls, he stops and says, bring Bartimaeus to me, bring him to me. And so now the crowd that was just telling Bartimaeus to be quiet, they're now passing along the word like, hey, Bartimaeus, he's calling for you. Quick, get up. And it's really beautiful. In these stories, there's not often a lot of details that are shared. So when you do see these details, you really got to pay attention as to what they're communicating. And it says that as soon as Bartimaeus heard this, he just threw off his cloak and he sprang to his feet. See his eagerness. See how excited Bartimaeus is. He's not slowly getting off the ground. He's just throwing off his cloak, springing to his feet. He can't get to Jesus quickly enough. So what's your own eagerness to be near him? How would you respond if you knew that he was calling you? How amped is your heart to be close to him? And so Bartimaeus, he comes to Jesus quickly in so much eagerness. And again, Jesus asks him the very same question he asked James and John. What do you want me to do for you? The very same question. And see Jesus' compassion and his tenderness for Bartimaeus. See that he's stopping and taking the time to ask him this question, to hear what his heart is longing for. And the same for you and I. Love this quote from Dane Ortland. He says, it is impossible for the affectionate heart of Christ to be made too much of, to be over-celebrated, for it to be exaggerated. It cannot be plumbed. It's impossible for us to make too much of the loving heart of Christ, for us to draw too much strength from it. So what is that for you? Do you see how caring and kind and compassionate Jesus is? Does it stir you up with confidence to bring every request to him? So Bartimaeus is given his moment and he says, let me receive my sight. And Jesus responds and he says, go your way. Your faith has healed you. And immediately, Bartimaeus receives his sight. This could be the end of the story. We could just wrap it up right there. But there's actually so much more going on. Because as Bartimaeus receives his sight, he doesn't take this as an opportunity to go sightseeing in Jericho, right? He doesn't take a vacation down by the Dead Sea. That's not what he does with his newfound freedom. What Bartimaeus does is he begins to follow Jesus on the road to Jerusalem. What Jesus has given him is not just sight. Jesus has removed the boundaries from Bartimaeus that kept him away. He's removed the obstacles that kept him from following him. That's what Jesus was really interested in. Yes, giving him his sight and healing him, but most of all, to give Bartimaeus an opportunity to walk with him towards the cross. For Bartimaeus, yes, just like James and John, to be made like him. What's curious, and a lot of scholars will comment on, is that Mark gives us this blind man's name. That we know he's named Bartimaeus. Not everyone in the Gospels are named, especially many of the people that Jesus heals. But this is a really good clue that Bartimaeus was probably a very well-known leader in the early church. So as people were initially hearing these stories or reading them, they would know, oh, this is that Bartimaeus. No kidding. This is how he got his start. That's crazy. And there's an opportunity for them to even go ask Bartimaeus, to hear the story of him as an eyewitness. That's why his name is given. So he doesn't just start on this journey to Jerusalem. He finishes the race and becoming more and more like Jesus. So for all of us here, take this, that if you are more of the religious insider and you feel your heart drawn to Jesus maybe for wrong motives, or maybe even you're a little bit put off by the suffering that you have to go through right now, see how Jesus drank this cup first for you. See how he came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for you. And if you're more the religious outsider, see how driven Jesus is to remove every obstacle from your path. That he wants you to know him and wants you to be with him and to follow him. So that, yes, you too can give your life to serve others, to not lift yourself up, but to be more and more like Jesus and being a slave and servant of all. So although we have all sorts of different things that we might want to ask Jesus for, as he says, what do you want me to do for you? Let's most of all see what a good gift God is giving us and welcoming us to become more like Jesus. That's the best possible thing. So in that, would you worship with us here one more time?
Are you hurting and broken within? Overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Behind your regrets and mistakes, come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes, a new life is born. Jesus is calling. to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. We bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Bear your crosses, you wait for the crowd. Tell the world of the treasure you found.
So go now in this blessing, that as you bring every request and need that you have to Jesus this week, would you know that He has such a heart to hear you no matter what you're asking? And that even more than that, He has such a kind heart to transform you into His image, and that He won't rest until that's accomplished. So go in that hope this week, and we'll see you guys again soon.